is no other creator of myths. There's no other experiencer of myths. There is no other myth, I'm going to suggest to you, in the end. Okay, so even though we might even have spiritual systems that rely on hierarchy and that kind of authority sort of form means, I mean by the sense of if you develop stuff yourself that should be not recognized by others, by spiritual presence itself authentically, that's a different story. But I mean, force, like in the Catholic churches, you're said to be having authority, so now you haven't imposed that on others because you're supposed to have the right degrees or something like that. Some other priest said you were. It's just because of that, because of power issues, not because of some inner spiritual quality of presence. That's what I'm talking about here. I always say with the inner spirit. So that's now, as Jung might say, it's fled the church, this quality of the spirit, the Holy Ghost or whatever. The Holy Ghost has fled the damn church, so to speak. And it's not to be found there anymore. It's to be found in the, so to speak, the Christians teach. It's to be found in the individual heart. I mean, it always has been. I'm going to say it's never not been. Of course it's always been that way. But, I mean, in a secular way, in a humanistic way. We don't think of it as suggesting not think of it as something outside the human being anymore. So what does that mean if it's not outside the human being anymore? I'm saying this itself is a queer strategy. It's a homo strategy to subvert unjust power over thousands of years. Could you do that? Breeders have to come into control, and they're very stupid and unjust, their way of functioning, their way of thinking, versus the homo way of thinking. I mean, the same-sex loving way that, if you go with that, if you take that as a position, it shows you a way to think, a way to relate to things, a way to understand things very different than the breeder ways of approaching things. And I want to suggest earlier on that most of the human societies, even though most people have been what we call breeders. This whole issue where one has to become more individual and bring on what we might call eventually democracy, where most people are what we might call breeders. And that kind of intelligence, that kind of sensibility. How can that be? How can they develop this kind of individuality when we misuse it? Not be able to appreciate it, but that's the whole point I would suggest there. It's an inner contradiction that will resolve itself. It's struggle with it, the press to continue to struggle with itself. Okay, even for them, even for everybody, for everyone to be self-developing. The power is in oneself and nowhere else. Nowhere else. It won't be impossible eventually. I want to suggest that this can keep happening for everyone. But they won't allow others to, quote, represent them in their power anymore. No one will allow that anymore. Everyone will want to retain their own power, because that's all the power there is or ever has been. It has never been seen or recognized that way. This must come. This day must come. The old spiritual systems are not good enough anymore for that. There must be a more hot way, a more challenging way. That's the way of psychology. This kind of psychology, self-awareness. In psychological terms, that's in terms of where one is hurt and weak and wounded and traumatized. Not trauma for its own sake, but again, as the trauma opens up to the transpersonal possibilities that are invoked in the issue of trauma as something bigger than oneself. Trauma itself, I'm saying. It's not the cause of transpersonalness. The other way around, I would suggest. People are so violent and terrible because they're caught in the transpersonal. They're caught in the urge to self-develop. But this, keep in mind, it's a self-development out of the mud. We were mud once. We will be again. So, since this is the most tremendous and delicate matter at this time and place, certainly, how do we then proceed, okay? And I'm suggesting that, modest as it may seem, to harness this still very cutting-edge interest in being more psychologically focused or minded. So we're trying to do that in general. Everyone's trying to do that. We're having to do that whether we want to or not. Become more psychologically minded in general. How do we find some ways to support that? There are different kinds of ways of supporting that. One way is to set up an institute that supports this. That is to focus issues of training and study and research and writing and publication and education and so on and so forth on these matters is a hallowed way now to do this kind of thing. But to set this up for the homo-ness of things, wow, no one's ever tried that before. That's really different. But yet along the lines of what I'm naming here, not merely so that we have then this level of participation in this great challenge for humanity to become more psychological by identifying people that can be seen as that, and we're kind of catching up, that's something called being homo. But I would suggest it's, of course, much more complicated than that, since we have been handled in a genocidal way for 1,000 years around our homo-ness, and that's what's the funny thing about suddenly catching up. I don't think so. It's a little more sophisticated than that. In other words, well, it might seem, just the homos who want to do their training program. In homo psychoanalysis, whatever that is. So what? Big deal. Well, we'll see, who knows, you know? So far, it's a very modest thing, okay? It may remain very modest, but at least we tried. Whereas I see no one else even trying this. So this is all real tentative and experimental. I want to invite you to all consider yourselves as possible participants in this great evolution of how this is moving forward, though how it all settles out. We have to see in its particulars how this thing all develops. So this is a big experiment to even try this on this kind of, again, to say it's a homo-centric thing is still very, very rancid to people who don't want to be pro-homo in this intense way. This is like the most intense version of this I can think of. This would be like the equivalent of what the fairies were like in 1979, like ultra-intense homo-ness. Though here again around being psychoanalytic as self-minded, but using these psychoanalytic forms of doing that or handling that versus older or non-psychoanalytic spiritual forms or philosophical forms. I don't wish to exclude spiritual or philosophical forms, especially as they're seen or related to symbolically, of course, because everything human or experience is a symbol, and nothing is not symbolic. And the level I'm naming here, so we should make either or. Any good analytic attitude takes use of all symbolic experiences and tools, such as philosophical tools, such as traditional spiritual tools. Myself have been trained in several of these traditional tools, but I find them all superseded by psychological attitude, which is why I wish to be psychoanalytic about these things. It's psychoanalytic about being gay, psychoanalytic about being gay-centered. In my opinion, if one attempts to be psychoanalytic about being gay-centered, one will have to develop what eventually becomes something like contemporary Uranian psychoanalysis. Okay, and what that has to do with is itself a whole big topic. Contemporary Uranian psychoanalysis. For those of you who haven't been exposed to the more formal attempts to define that, that's an ongoing project. What we call the application packet that we just sent out to some of the potential training applicant persons has within it several different documents, and one is an outline of a core curriculum matters that has to do with defining what is meant by this contemporary Uranian psychoanalysis, which is, in my opinion, again, is the attempt to put into practice being gay-centered psychologically, let's call it. Being psychologically minded in a truly gay-centered way. The outcome is, and what might be called contemporary, as of the current practice time, Uranian as gay-centered analytic theory and practice. So how do we get now more focused on that, even more so? One way to do that is to try and invite in others at a more serious level of involvement. And we would really seriously like to try that. So we figured we have to get this started to do that. The main proviso is that folks have been already trying out gay-centered inner work. Really. That's the one they can really put in all the documents. It's so amazing to think of it. To revise these damn documents, and it's all a work in progress. And then we had to figure out, well, how are we going to do it? How are we going to get this started? If we have too many people, we can't run the damn thing. So I thought, oh my God, we can't probably take more than 4 or 5 to start. It's just these two guys here and poor Chris over there. And we got Dustin to assist. There you are, Dustin, to assist us, and that's it. To start a whole training program, that's not much to run on. You see, that's why we have to stop this intermediate group in order to take the manpower back from that in order to get this more going. And even this. So, we're very well aware there's a lot more interest in doing this than the 5 folks who we invited to start the process with us. We had to invite someone to do this. We do feel bad about those who were not invited also, because we want to invite everyone who's seriously interested in this to keep more seriously trying to get into it, because we all feel that what the gay-centered inner work is about is truly profound. Itself, whether or not we have an institute or a training or any of that. Gay-centered inner work is profound, profound, profound. In my opinion, ways that are just beginning to be discovered in all kinds of different ways. I hope that institute that I've been concerned to help support for these last 6 years to get more and more supportive of this, more and more encouraging of folks getting into this stuff, and develop it more and more. So, we who set up this program, in order to do it, then we had to have it structured. We had to have structure for it, we had to have a way of framing it, and so on and so forth. So one way we thought to do it was prepare a group of documents. So that's what we did. We set up a whole, actually, little batch of documents, including the 3 that we're going to share this evening. First of all, we composed what we call a founding statement of the advanced training program, which I'm going to share with you now. I'm sorry about it. I'm going to share the founding statement with you. And then I'm going to ask my 2 associates here to read these other 2 documents that we decided would be valuable to share. Roger will read to you the application for the advanced training program. And then Doug will read to you the consent to training, which will be actually signed by the would-be trainee after acceptance into the program and the program. And we feel it's really important that those who we have invited to apply to this program see this consent form beforehand as part of the information that helps to describe what is this damn program. And this outline of the core curriculum, which I'm going to, with a couple others, explore next month, continues that by getting more into what is the substance of this curriculum in the training program vis-a-vis this contemporary Uranian psychoanalysis. Okay? So this month we're going to share 3 of the documents that are more some of the initial framing of how to do this thing. We'd love to hear any of your reactions or feedback or whatnot about that. It's all a work in progress. And then next month we will share this core curriculum outline and some of our thinking about what the substance of the training program is. Though I don't want to imply that any questions or interests you might have and all that should be excluded right now, of course. I don't want to set up these artificial boundaries that aren't really true about what we're trying to do. But I thought as a way to get started, I might do that. Okay, I might say a few comments as I read you the document, and I invite Roger to read the second document, and then Doug will read his document, meaning in the sense, by his, we all worked on all these documents together. I would say Doug had a big hand in composing the initial draft of this consent form. There's a lot of experience in it, and there's a lot of hard work to put that together. Yeah, though we've modified aspects, and we've even modified a little more, by the way, from what you'll see tonight. There's a few little touches that are still not quite satisfying to us. So what I thought I would do is start with sharing with you the founding statement. Okay? For your information, was the first thing that we put together that begins to formulate what we're talking about here. I'll read it to you. Because a serious training program must be at the core of any psychoanalytic institute's successful functioning and perpetuation. The Institute for Contemporary Uranian Psychoanalysis, that's the ICUP, has moved to initiate such an endeavor beginning in the summer of 2011. This effort will be called, quote, the Advanced Training Program in Contemporary Uranian Psychoanalysis, unquote, the program. And its successful completion will lead to certification in the practice of contemporary Uranian psychoanalysis, whatever that is, and membership in the Institute. Membership in it, as I mentioned before, we're very interested in what does this all mean to expand who we are. The program will proceed through 2 sections, a pre-candidacy phase, consisting of an introductory intensive course of study and training, which, if adequately undertaken as assessed on an individual basis, will lead to advancement into the candidacy stage of more refined learning and participation preparatory to full membership. 2-stage program, which you know. The advanced training program will be concerned with the development of depthful competence in the current theory and practice of Uranian psychoanalysis, suitable to operational involvement in the ICUP. When we get to the consent form, you'll see some of the reasons that are implied in the consent form of what that means. Suitable to operational involvement in the ICUP. All of us personally have been through this suitable involvement. What does it mean, suitable involvement? You'll see when we get to Doug will share some of our concerns and what that implies, and then we'll get into what this is about, why we are interested in this whole area, what this means. Suitable to operational involvement in the ICP. Because it will be a gay-centered, and this has to do with it being gay-centered, by the way, why this is so.